Africa and globally. Its reputation is largely grounded in the efforts of post-genocide, where the Rwandan civil society groups and the ruling party, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, made mainstream gender equality into politics and throughout its various development and transitional justice initiatives. Where there is plenty of research that frames modern Rwanda as deeply patriarchal, there is a need for careful contextualization of Rwanda's gender politics prior to the nation's independence in 1962, and especially before colonization in 1896. Indeed, scholars know very little about Rwandan women and their contribution to their communities and nation prior to independence. However, there is occasional example of women who figure prominently within the historiography, all of whom were elite affiliated with the monarchy and who acted both in traditional roles and in obviously oppositions to the assumed contemporary Rwandan gender norms in order to exercise political power. And we've seen the Queen Mother Kanjogera, who's one of good example, that there are many other women which we haven't been able to cover today. But I wanted to introduce to you to Madame Victoire Ingabire, who is leading a political party in Rwanda and is still fighting for the freedom for Rwandan people. So I'll share her presentation as she's unable to be with us this afternoon. So I will, if you bear with me, I'll find the presentation, which is here, and then read for you. So she says, good afternoon to everyone. As I was introduced by Marilis Umuhoza, my name is Victoire Ingabire Umuhoza, married and a mother of 3 children and living in the Netherlands. Married with 3 children, all living in the Netherlands. I'm a former presidential hopeful in the 2010 presidential elections in Rwanda, whose dreams were shattered when I ended up being arrested and sentenced to 15 years in jail sentence. On appeal, the African Court for Human and People's Rights ruled that my right had been violated and ordered the Rwandan government to pay reparations. The government did not carry out the orders of the African Court, but luckily I was released under the presidential clemency after serving 8 years in prison, including 5 years in solitary confinement. I'm leading a political party called Dalfa Umurinzi, Development and Liberties for All. My efforts, bear with me, the internet is not good. My efforts to get it registered have been fruitless. However, despite the refusal, obstacle, and threats, I'm still standing up and calling for democracy, rule of law, respect for human rights, and development for all. The only pathway to durable peace and prosperity in Rwanda and in the Great Lake region of Africa. Risky business, yes. Why not give up and join my husband and children? The answer is, I shall not abandon my dream. I shall not abandon my dream for better Rwanda and region of Great Lakes. I cannot abandon colleagues languishing in prison because we share the same dream of Rwanda. I believe the cause is bigger than an individual self. Victoire Ingabire Umuhoza, the cause is bigger than an individual self, Victoire Ingabire Umuhoza, than a single family, than a single country, Rwanda. Therefore, I see myself at home with you today. I believe that while we act locally, we must think globally as a region, a continent, and as one world. It is in the regards that I would like to seize this opportunity to thank most sincerely the social platform for Congolese and Francophone African women in the UK for organizing this event. dedicated to taking African women out of the rubble of history to highlight their spiritual, political, economic, cultural, and their scientific power in commemoration of the International African Women's Day. I thank you for having me to share with you my personal experience, and grateful to Ms. Marilis Nomhoza for making this possible. I'm so pleased that I have been an inspiration to her, and hope I am an inspiration to many in our struggle for social justice. When I look at myself, what I have gone through, leaving my family, a good life and a good job in Europe, and going back with the hope of moving my country, Rwanda, forward and building a better country for every Rwandan, but ending up in jail. I feel humbled by the heroism, the courage, the resilience of those women, widows of genocide, of war crimes and crimes against humanity, young girls who became head of families prematurely because their parents were killed, those girls who are rejected by families because they have children born out of rape, both in Rwanda and in the Democratic Republic of Congo. They work hard every day to feed their families, to get fees to get their children to school, to buy their uniform and school materials, to pay their medical care too. Ordinary women are still today the backbone of African economies. Their voice is rarely heard. I'm convinced more than ever, before I had made the right decision to go back to my country, to be near my people, to share their dreams and struggles, and accompanying them to a better future. I can assure you that I'm inspired by the heroism of these ordinary women and young girls whose heroism is left in the rubble of history. We must get their history out of the rubble. If we women cannot speak for them, who will do that? I will not right now if not right now, when is it going to happen? This is indeed a good opportunity to raise awareness about these unsung heroes. My prayer is, on this day, let us celebrate the heroism of these ordinary women. Take a resolution to advocate for their rights, for justice, for their economic empowerment, by asking governments to providing them with finances, advice to develop projects suited to their individual situation. It is quite shocking when government agents are hunting down petty vendors or street vendors, or even throwing them in prison for doing unlawful business without offering alternative source of income. Yet they know it is their only source of their livelihood for their families. Let us also support those men and women who are persecuted for defending women's rights and calling for their genuine empowerment. As far as women in the African Great Lakes are concerned, the United Nations has adopted a strategy for peace consolidation and conflict resolution and prevention in December 2020. In that strategy, women and youth have been a platform to express their ideas on how peace and security can be achieved across regional states. It is important that women engage with that strategy for their rights to be heard. On my side, I have been calling for political dialogue to take part in each Great Lakes region states between government, its opponent, and civil society, including those led by women and advocating for women's rights, with the aim to solve internal social and economic issues that contribute to conflict in the east of Democratic Republic of Congo. You would agree with me that if conflict ends in that region, then no woman would be treated as they are at this moment. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
That's the message from Madame Victoire. Now we'll be moving to our sister from Ghana. She ready? She didn't get through. Okay, so if you bear with us, we will give you another video where we're still sorting out the connection for our sister from Ghana. So we will be now watching Black Women Warriors. Black Women Warriors of History. I'll bring this up.
Malcolm X once said that the most disrespected person was the black woman, and the most unprotected person was again the black woman. In some cases, many would agree that this is indeed still a reality today. Looking back through history, at least when I was growing up and learning about history, strong black women who stormed the battlefield wasn't something that had ever been shown in my curriculum. To be completely honest, I'm pretty sure it's not shown in the curriculum in schools now. Other than Rosa Parks, it almost seems like history doesn't want to acknowledge some of the women I'm about to talk about, which is a damn shame because once I started digging into the history of black females beyond what I was taught, I found some pretty fascinating characters. So let's dive in. Yaa Asantewaa. Yaa Asantewaa was the queen mother of the Edwesi tribe of the Ashanti in what is now modern-day Ghana. She was said to have been an exceptionally brave warrior who in March 1900 constructed and led an army of thousands against the British colonial forces who occupied Ghana at the time. Yaa Asantewaa also led her army to prevent the British efforts to subjugate their people and to stop them from stealing the golden stool, which was the Asante nation's spiritual symbol of unity and sovereignty. Yaa Asantewaa was responsible for mobilizing the Asante troops, and for 3 months, she was able to lay siege to the British fort of Kumasi. The colonizers at Fort Kumasi would have to summon for reinforcements in the form of several thousand troops and artillery to break up the siege. It would result in the exiling of Queen Yaa Asantewaa and 15 of her closest advisors to Seychelles. She would live in exile until her death in October 1921. The siege at Fort Kumasi would also become known as Yaa Asantewaa's War, and was one of the last major wars on the continent of Africa to be led by a woman. Speaking of wars led by women, this brings me on to my next group of characters, the Dome Amazons. The Dome Amazons, or the Mino, was an all-female military regiment of the Fon people of the Kingdom of Dome in the present-day Republic of Benin. This army of women existed from the 17th century all the way to the end of the 19th century. While European natives referred to the women soldiers as Amazons because of their similarity to the semi-mythical Amazons of ancient Anatolia, they called themselves Aoshi, otherwise known as the wives of kings, or Mino, meaning our mothers, in the Fon language. They were extremely well trained and were instilled with a very aggressive attitude. They were ferocious fighters with a reputation for decapitating soldiers in the middle of battle, as well as serving as torturers to those who were unfortunate enough to become their captives. Sedong Humbert was one of the great leaders of the Mino. In 1851, she led an army of 6,000 women against the Egba fortress of Abeokuta. The Mino were armed with spears, bows and swords, but to their misfortune, the Egba had acquired European cannons to propel them. Only about 1,200 of the Mino survived the battle, of the 6,000 that went charging in. In 1890, King Bahanzin used his Mino fighters alongside the male soldiers to battle the French forces during the First Franco-Dahomean War. In this war, the French army lost several battles to the female warriors due to their skill in battle. It's said that the French were unprepared for the women's agility and their sheer ruthlessness. Amani Amanirenas was one of the greatest queen mothers who ruled over the Meriotic kingdom of Kush in northeast Africa. She reigned over the kingdom between 40 BC to 10 BC. This was way back when Roman Emperor Augustus levied a tax on her people in 24 BC. Amanirenas and her son Akinadad led an army of 30,000 men to sack the Roman fort in the Egyptian city of Aswan. To add salt to the wound, they also destroyed the statues of Caesar in Elephantine. Under orders from Augustus, the Roman general Petronius retaliated, but met strong resistance from Amanirenas and her troops. After over 3 years of harsh fighting, the two parties agreed to negotiate a peace treaty. In the end, the Romans agreed to return their army to Egypt, as well as withdrawing their fort, giving the land they had taken back, and rescind the tax they had instated. The brave warrior Queen Amanirenas is remembered for her loyal combat, for she would actually go into battle side by side with her own soldiers. She was blinded in one eye after she was wounded by a Roman. However, the full extent of her injuries, or the harms she had received at the hands of the Romans, has yet to be disclosed, since the account of the war, written in Meriotic script, has not yet been fully decoded. Carlotta Lucumi. Carlotta was kidnapped from her Yoruba tribe, brought in chains to Cuba as a child, and forced into slavery in the city of Matanzas, where she worked to harvest and process sugarcane under brutal conditions. Despite her misfortune, she was described as being bright, musical, determined, and smart. In 1843, she and another enslaved woman named Firmina led an organized rebellion at the sugar plantation. Firmina, though, was locked up after her plans for the rebellion were discovered. Using talking drums to secretly communicate, Carlotta and her fellow warriors freed Firmina and dozens of others, and went on to wage a well-organized armed uprising against at least 5 brutal slave plantation operations in the area. Carlotta's brave battle went on for 1 year before she was captured, tortured, and executed by Spanish landowners. Queen Zinga Mbande. Queen Zinga Mbande was a highly intelligent and powerful 17th century ruler of the Dongo and Mpambo kingdoms, which is now modern-day Angola. Around the turn of the 17th century, Nzinga fearlessly and cleverly fought for the freedom of her kingdoms against the Portuguese, who were colonizing the Central African coast at the time to control the slave trade. To build up her kingdom's military, Nzinga offered sanctuary to runaway slaves and Portuguese-trained African soldiers. She stirred up quite the rebellion amongst the people still left in Ndongo, which had then come under the rule of the Portuguese. Zinga also formed an alliance with the Dutch against the Portuguese. However, their combined forces were not enough to drive the Portuguese out. After retreating from Mpambo again, Nzinga started to focus on developing the kingdom as a trading power and a gateway to the Central African interior. At the time of Nzinga's death in 1661, at the age of 81, Mpambo had become a powerful kingdom that managed to resist Portuguese colonization attempts for an extended period of time. Nzinga's kingdom was only integrated into Angola in the late 19th century. As always guys, if you enjoyed this video, then do give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about these badass ladies from history, and stay tuned for more Black history. Until the next time guys.
Don't use bullet